My mother's funeral was on a Tuesday, and by Thursday, my sister had already changed the locks on the house I grew up in. That should have been my first warning. But grief makes you stupid, doesn't it? Makes you trust people you should be running from. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up, because what happened next, what my own family did to me, it's the kind of betrayal that rewrites your entire understanding of who you are. And if you've ever wondered how far blood relatives will go for money, stick around. You're about to find out. My name is Sarah, I'm 43, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew my family. I thought I understood loyalty. I thought DNA meant something. I was wrong about all of it. Mom died suddenly. Heart attack at 68, no warning, just had gone. 1 minute she's texting me about her new recipe for apple crisp, the next minute I'm getting a call from emergency services saying she's been rushed to the hospital. By the time I got there from 3 states away, she was already gone. The funeral was everything you'd expect. Crying relatives, casseroles, awkward hugs from people I hadn't seen in years. My sister Linda played the grieving daughter perfectly. Tissues dabbing at her eyes, accepting condolences with that practiced sad smile. She'd always been the performer in our family. But there was something else. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The way she kept checking her phone during the service. The way she pulled certain relatives aside for whispered conversations. The way she avoided looking me directly in the eye. 3 days after we buried Mom, Linda called me. Her voice had this strange tone, almost businesslike. Sarah, we need to talk about Mom's will. I was still in that grief fog, you know? Still expecting Mom to call and ask about my drive home. Still reaching for my phone to text her updates about my day. The will was the last thing on my mind. Can't it wait a few weeks? I asked. I'm not really ready to. No, she cut me off. It can't wait. There are complications. Complications. That word should have sent up every red flag I owned. Instead, I just felt tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. What kind of complications? Linda's pause lasted too long. Just come back this weekend. We'll go through everything together. The house felt different when I walked through that front door on Saturday morning. Emptier, obviously, but something else too. It felt violated somehow. Like someone had been going through drawers, moving things, searching. Linda was waiting in the kitchen with a manila folder and an expression I'd never seen before. Cold. Clinical. Like she was looking at a stranger instead of the sister who used to braid her hair before school. Sit down, she said, patting the chair next to her. The same chair where Mom used to do crossword puzzles every morning. Inside that folder were copies of documents. Mom's will, bank statements, property deeds. My hands were shaking as I flipped through them, trying to make sense of the numbers and legal language. I don't understand, I said. This says Mom left everything to both of us equally. The house, her savings, everything split 50-50. Linda nodded. That's right. But there's a problem. She pulled out another document. This one looked newer, crisper. The date was from 3 months before Mom died. Mom updated her will, Linda said, her voice completely flat. She left everything to me. The world went sideways. I stared at that document, reading the same lines over and over. My mother's signature at the bottom, witnessed by 2 people I didn't recognize. This can't be right, I whispered. Mom would never, we talked about this. She always said she wanted us to share everything equally. She wanted us to stay close after she was gone. Linda's expression didn't change. People change their minds, Sarah. Especially when they realize which daughter actually cared enough to visit regularly. That hit like a physical blow. It was true that Linda lived closer. True that she visited more often. But I had my own life, my own responsibilities. Mom understood that. She never made me feel guilty about the distance. I visited, I said weakly. Maybe not as much as you, but I was here for birthdays, holidays. 2 or 3 times a year doesn't compare to 2 or 3 times a week. I kept staring at that will, looking for something, anything that would make it make sense. Mom's handwriting looked right. The signature looked right. But everything about it felt wrong. I need to see the original, I said. You're looking at it. No, I mean the first will. The one that split everything equally. Linda's face went completely blank. There was no other will, Sarah. This is the only one. Now I knew she was lying. I'd been with Mom when she had that will drawn up 5 years ago. We'd gone to her lawyer's office together. I'd been one of the witnesses. Linda, I was there when Mom signed the first will. I witnessed it myself. I don't know what you think you remember, but you're confused. This is Mom's only will. The gaslighting was so blatant, so obvious, that for a moment I couldn't even respond. This was my sister. The person who knew me better than anyone. And she was looking me straight in the eye and lying. I want to call Mom's lawyer, I said. You can't. Why not? He retired. Closed his practice. Every answer felt rehearsed. Like she'd been preparing for this conversation. I stood up, my chair scraping against the linoleum floor. This is insane, Linda. You're my sister. We're supposed to be in this together. For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw something in her eyes, not guilt exactly, but knowledge. Like she knew exactly what she was doing and had made peace with it. Mom made her choice, she said quietly. Maybe you should ask yourself why. I left that house in a daze. Drove 3 hours back to my apartment with my mind spinning. This couldn't be happening. Families didn't do this to each other. Sisters didn't do this to each other. But even as I told myself that, a tiny voice in the back of my head was whispering doubts. Had I been a bad daughter? Had I really not visited enough? Had Mom felt abandoned, forgotten? The guilt was almost worse than the shock. I spent the next week calling every lawyer in Mom's small town, trying to find someone who remembered her original will. Most had never heard of her. The few who had couldn't access any records without proper authorization. Finally, I found one paralegal who remembered Mom coming in 5 years ago. Oh yes, Mrs. Henderson, she said. Sweet lady. I remember her bringing both her daughters in for the will signing. You and your sister both witnessed it. My heart started pounding. Do you remember what the will said? I can't discuss specifics without authorization, but, well, let's just say it would be very unusual for someone to completely disinherit one child unless there were extraordinary circumstances. Extraordinary circumstances. What could Mom have possibly considered extraordinary enough to cut me out completely? I called Linda that night. I've been thinking, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Maybe we can work something out. I'm not asking for half of everything, but maybe just a small portion? Some of Mom's jewelry, or a few thousand from her savings account. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Sarah, you need to accept reality. Mom left you nothing. There's nothing to work out. But we're family. Family? Linda's voice turned sharp. Where was this family loyalty when Mom was calling you crying because she was lonely? Where was family when she fell and sprained her wrist and had to take herself to the emergency room because you were too busy to visit? Each word was like a knife. Because part of it was true. I had been busy. I did have my own life. But Mom never told me she was crying. Never told me she felt abandoned. She never said? Of course she didn't say. She didn't want to burden you with her feelings. But I was here, Sarah. I heard her on the phone with her friends, talking about how disappointed she was. How she'd raised 2 daughters but only one of them seemed to care. The guilt was suffocating. Maybe I had been selfish. Maybe I had been a terrible daughter. Maybe I deserved this. But then something Linda said caught my attention. Wait. You said she sprained her wrist. When was this? Last winter. February, I think. I remembered February. I remembered because I'd called Mom that month to tell her about my promotion at work. She'd sounded fine. Happy, even. Excited for me. Linda, I talked to Mom in February. She never mentioned hurting herself. Well, she wouldn't want to worry you. No, you don't understand. I offered to visit that month. I had vacation time saved up. Mom said she was fine, that spring would be better for a visit because her garden would be blooming. Another pause. Shorter this time, but I heard it. You must be confused about the timing, Linda said. But I wasn't confused. I had a work calendar that went back years. I could check the exact date of that phone call. That night, I started digging. Really digging. I called Mom's neighbors. Her church friends. Her doctor's office. Slowly, carefully, I started piecing together the last few months of her life. And what I found, it changed everything. Mrs. Patterson, who lived next door, remembered Mom mentioning how excited she was that both her daughters would be inheriting the house. This was just 2 months before Mom died. She was so proud, Mrs. Patterson told me over the phone. Said she'd worked her whole life to have something to leave you girls. Said it made all the sacrifice worth it. Mom's pastor remembered her asking about setting up a college fund for her future grandchildren with part of her savings. She wanted both Linda and me to contribute equally. Her doctor had no record of any emergency room visit for a sprained wrist. I hired a private investigator. Cost me $2,000 I couldn't really afford, but I had to know the truth. What he found made my blood run cold. Linda had been forging Mom's signature for months. Small things at first. Signing for package deliveries when Mom wasn't home. Then bigger things. Checks. Bank documents. The will was a fake. A very good fake, but a fake nonetheless. The witnesses were Linda's friends from work. The notary was someone she'd paid off. But here's the part that really broke me. Mom did update her will 3 months before she died. But not the way Linda claimed. She actually left me more than half of everything. 60% to me, 40% to Linda. There was a handwritten note attached explaining her reasoning. Sarah has always been the responsible one, Mom had written. She's careful with money and will make sure both girls are taken care of if something happens to Linda. I trust her judgment completely. My sister hadn't just stolen my inheritance. She'd stolen my mother's final expression of love and trust. I sat in my car outside the investigator's office, holding copies of the real will and the forged one, and I cried until I couldn't breathe. Not just from grief, but from rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Linda had looked me in the eye and told me our mother didn't love me. Had made me question every memory, every conversation, every moment of our relationship. Had made me believe I was a bad daughter, a selfish person, someone who deserved to be abandoned. All for money. I could have gone to the police. Should have gone to the police. Forgery, fraud, theft. Linda was looking at serious jail time. But I had a better idea. I called Linda and told her I'd accepted the situation. That I was ready to move on. I even apologized for being difficult. I'm glad you're being reasonable, she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. This doesn't change anything between us, Sarah. We're still sisters. Sisters. Right. Actually, I said, I was hoping we could meet one more time. At Mom's house. I'd like to say goodbye properly, maybe take a few small mementos. Nothing valuable, just some photos and maybe that old recipe box. Linda agreed immediately. Probably figured she could afford to be generous now that she'd gotten away with everything. We met the next Saturday. Linda had already started redecorating, I noticed. New curtains in the living room. Different furniture arrangement. Like she was erasing Mom's presence entirely. It's looking good, I lied. Very modern. Thanks. I figured it was time for some changes. I walked through the house slowly, touching things, picking up photo albums. Linda watched me with what I'm sure she thought was sisterly concern. You know, I said casually, I've been thinking about what you said. About me not being a good daughter. Sarah, I didn't mean. No, you were right. I should have visited more. Should have called more. Should have been here when Mom needed me. Linda looked uncomfortable, probably because she'd expected more fight from me. We all have regrets, she said. But here's what I don't understand, I continued, pulling out my phone. I found this old calendar from February. The month you said Mom hurt her wrist? I showed her the screen. February 14th. Valentine's Day. I called Mom that day to wish her happy Valentine's Day. We talked for 2 hours. She told me all about the new bird feeder she'd bought, how the cardinals were already visiting. She sounded so happy, Linda. So healthy. Linda glanced at the phone, then back at my face. Something shifted in her expression. People hide pain, Sarah. Especially from their children. Maybe. But then I called her doctor's office. No record of any emergency room visits last winter. I called the hospital too. Nothing. The color started draining from Linda's face. You're calling me a liar? I'm asking you to explain the discrepancy. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. The house was completely silent except for the old grandfather clock in the hallway, the same one that had counted down the hours of our childhood. Finally, Linda spoke. What do you want, Sarah? I want the truth. The truth is that Mom left everything to me. Whether you believe the reasons or not doesn't matter. The will is legally binding. I nodded slowly. You're right. The will is legally binding. But Linda, which will are we talking about? I pulled out the envelope the investigator had given me. Linda's eyes went wide when she saw it. This is Mom's real will, I said quietly. The one she actually signed. The one where she left me 60% of everything because she trusted me to take care of both of us. Linda went completely still. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how I'd found out, what I knew, what I could prove. I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull. Linda, stop. My voice was sharper than I'd intended. I know about the forged signatures. I know about your friends who pretended to witness the fake will. I know about the notary you bribed. She sank into Mom's old recliner, the one where our mother used to read us bedtime stories. How long have you been planning this? I asked. For a moment, I thought she might try to keep lying. But something in my voice must have convinced her it was over. 2 years, she whispered. 2 years. She'd been planning to rob me for 2 years. Why, Linda? We could have shared everything. We could have honored Mom's memory together. When she looked up at me, her face was completely different. Harder. Like she'd dropped some mask I'd never even realized she was wearing. Because you had everything, Sarah. You always had everything. What are you talking about? College. Career. That fancy apartment in the city. You got to leave this place, build a life, become someone. I stayed here. I took care of Mom. I gave up everything to be the good daughter. The bitterness in her voice was like acid. Linda, no one asked you to. Of course no one asked. That's the point. Good daughters don't wait to be asked. Good daughters just sacrifice. Just give up their dreams and their futures to take care of family. I stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time in my life. This wasn't about money. This wasn't even about Mom. This was about 30 years of resentment that Linda had been hiding behind smiles and holiday cards. You hate me, I said. It wasn't a question. I don't hate you. I hate what you represent. I hate that you got to be selfish and I didn't. I hate that you got to chase your dreams while I changed bedpans and organized pillboxes and listened to the same stories over and over again. Mom didn't need bedpans, Linda. She was healthy until. You have no idea what Mom needed because you weren't here. Linda's voice cracked. You weren't here for the panic attacks when Dad died. You weren't here for the depression. You weren't here for the nights she couldn't sleep and called me at 2 in the morning just to hear another human voice. Some of this was news to me. Mom had never mentioned panic attacks or sleepless nights during our phone calls. She never told me. Because she didn't want to burden you. Because she knew you had your own life and she didn't want to be the needy mother who guilt-tripped her successful daughter into coming home. I felt something crack inside my chest. Linda, if I had known. What? You would have given up your career? Moved back to this little town? Become a caregiver like me? The question hung in the air between us. And honestly? I wasn't sure of the answer. Maybe, I said finally. Or maybe we could have found another solution. Hired help. Or brought Mom closer to me. We could have figured it out together. Linda laughed, but there was no humor in it. Right. We could have hired help with whose money? Mom's pension barely covered her medications. And bring her to the city? She would have hated that. This house, this town, it was all she had left of Dad. I was starting to understand, but understanding didn't excuse what she'd done. So you decided to steal everything. I decided to take what I'd earned. 30 years of sacrifice, Sarah. 30 years of putting my life on hold. What's that worth? More than money, I said. But not this. Not lying to me about Mom's feelings. Not making me think she didn't love me. For the first time since we'd started talking, Linda looked ashamed. I didn't mean for it to go that far. But it did. You let me believe I was a terrible daughter. You let me think Mom died disappointed in me. I was angry. You were cruel. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, I could hear kids playing in the neighborhood where we'd grown up. Same sounds, different children. What happens now? Linda asked finally. I'd been thinking about that question for days. I could turn her in. Watch her get arrested, prosecuted, probably sent to prison. I could take everything Mom had wanted me to have. But sitting there in that house, looking at my sister, I realized something. Linda wasn't evil. She was broken. Twisted up by years of resentment and sacrifice that nobody had asked her to make. I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me wants to see you pay for what you did. Part of me understands why you did it. And the other part? I thought about Mom. About what she would want. About the note she'd written explaining why she trusted me to take care of both of us. The other part wants to honor Mom's wishes. All of them. I stood up and walked to the window that looked out over Mom's garden. She'd planted it the year after Dad died, said she needed something beautiful to focus on. The roses were blooming now, red and white and pink. Here's what's going to happen, I said without turning around. You're going to sign over your share of the inheritance to me, as Mom intended. But I'm not going to keep it all. Linda didn't say anything. I'm going to set up a trust fund. Half for me, half for you. But your half comes with conditions. What conditions? I turned back to face her. You get therapy. Real therapy, not just a few sessions. You deal with this resentment before it destroys what's left of our relationship. And if I don't? Then you get nothing. And I still turn over the evidence to the police. Linda stared at me for a long time. You're just like her, you know, she said finally. Like who? Mom. Always trying to fix everything. Always thinking you know what's best for everyone. Maybe that was true. Maybe it was a flaw. But sitting there in Mom's house, surrounded by the life she'd built and the love she'd given us, I couldn't bring myself to care. Do we have a deal? Linda looked around the room, taking in the photos of our childhood, the furniture that held 40 years of memories, the walls that had witnessed our entire family history. What about the house? We sell it. Split the proceeds equally, like Mom originally planned. But this is home. Home isn't a building, Linda. It's the people who love you. And if you want to still be my sister, really be my sister, then we start over. Both of us. She was quiet for so long I started to think she was going to refuse. That she'd rather go to prison than admit she needed help. But finally, she nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay. 6 months later, I got a call from Linda's therapist. With Linda's permission, she wanted to update me on the progress. Your sister has been working very hard, Dr. Martinez told me. She's starting to understand how her caregiver role became her entire identity. How she lost herself in taking care of others and resented them for it. Is she getting better? Recovery isn't linear, but yes. She's learning to separate her worth from her usefulness. Learning to build a life that's hers. Last week, Linda called me herself. Not to talk about money or inheritance or the past. Just to talk. I got a job, she said, and I could hear excitement in her voice for the first time in years. Part-time at the library. Nothing fancy, but I love it. That's wonderful, Linda. Sarah? Yeah? I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not just for the money, but for everything. For making you think Mom didn't love you. For 30 years of pretending to be someone I wasn't. For hating you for having the courage to live the life I was too scared to build for myself. I was quiet for a moment, feeling something shift in my chest. Something that had been tight and painful for months finally starting to loosen. I'm sorry too, I said. For not seeing how much you were carrying. For not fighting harder to stay connected. For taking your sacrifice for granted. We were both just trying to survive, weren't we? Yeah. We were. We talked for another hour. About Mom, about our childhood, about the future. It felt different. Honest in a way our conversations had never been before. When we hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about families and forgiveness and the price of secrets. About how love can become poisonous when it's mixed with resentment and unexpressed needs. I thought about Mom and what she'd wanted for us. Not just the money or the house, but the relationship. The sisterhood she'd tried so hard to nurture. Maybe we'll get there. Maybe we won't. But for the first time since that horrible day in Mom's kitchen, I have hope. Because here's what I learned, families aren't just connected by blood. They're connected by choice. By the daily decision to show up, to forgive, to try again. And sometimes, when everything falls apart, that's when you finally learn what love actually means. The inheritance Linda tried to steal wasn't really about money. It was about trust. About being seen and valued and remembered. About knowing that your life mattered to someone else. Mom left me that gift even after she was gone. Not just in her will, but in her final act of faith in who I could become. And maybe, just maybe, Linda and I can rebuild something worth inheriting too. If you've ever dealt with family betrayal or complicated relationships, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. And if this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more real stories about the messy, complicated business of being human.